Hello everybody, it's Jeff from Close to Home in Glastonbury, and I'm very excited to be presenting the 2024 Glastonbury Block of the Month that I entitled Make Yourself at Home. You'll see why in a little bit once we get talking about the block, but first I want to talk a little about the 2023 blocks and quilt. Get those blocks together, get those quilts finished and bound. You have until April 6th to bring your finished quilts from last year into the store to be photographed for the contest in April. There will be more details about voting and the contest when we get closer to April. But in the meantime, if you have those quilts finished, bring them in. I'm here in the store Tuesdays through Saturdays. So bring it in and I can take a picture. I'm really excited to see what you've done, and we are going to move forward with this year's program. And much like last year and the previous years with Marcia's programs, you're going to be receiving the focus fabric in your kits and the pattern to make it. And this year's focus fabric is this beautiful, beautiful tourmaline tie-dye, which you can go a lot of different ways. You can go do a lot of colors. This is a batik. Really, really fun to work with, and I'm really excited to see what you can do with this. So again, when you come in for your first month, you are going to purchase a $10 kit, and in that $10 kit you are going to get the tourmaline fabric and the pattern. Now, a few things to note is you will have to buy a few fabrics to finish the blocks. This year I am providing a suggested setting for those that you don't have to follow. We're just going to do a contest just like this last year. So you can put those blocks together however you want. But if you want, I suggested a setting that I'm going to show you right now. You can see that I'm using some houses to set those blocks in a nice way. That's the name of the quilt, Make Yourself at Home. Now the fabric requirements for this quilt are going to include a background fabric and an accent color. This year you're going to, I suggest, pick 6 different accent colors. You're going to use each of those accent colors on 2 of the blocks, because this year we're only using 3 different fabrics per block. So if you are just making the blocks and not using the setting, you're going to need 1 3/4 yards of a background fabric, and I suggest getting 6 3/8 yards cuts for your accent fabrics. And then if you can mix and match those as you wish. In a total, if you just want to use 1 color for your accent fabric, you can use 2 1/4 yards of accent fabric, and that'll be enough to make the blocks. Now, if you're doing the house setting, then you are going to buy 4 1/4 yards of a background fabric, and you're going to buy 6 1/2 yards that you are then going to cut into fat quarters. If you don't know what a fat quarter is, it's an 18 by 21 inch piece. So basically it's a 1/2 yard cut, and then you're going to trim along the folded edge on the bolt to get your fat quarters. And then that'll give you 12 fat quarters that you can use for each of your blocks. In addition to that, for the suggested house setting, you are going to need a 1/4 yard for a cornerstone fabric in your sashing. So pick a 1/4 yard of color that you really like to add to that. This is a great time to look at your supplies again and make sure that you have everything that you need to be successful in your quilt and really in quilting in general. It's a good time to take stock. First thing we're going to talk about is needles. For piecing, you want to make sure you're using a 80 or a 90 size needle, universal, or if you're using batik and you're going to use a lot of batiks, I do suggest using a sharp, or sometimes called a microtex needle. Those are good for getting through that tighter weave of batik. So 80 or 90, a universal or a microtex needle. Get yourself some pins. Make sure you have some nice, long, thin quilting pins. I really like the Clover flathead flower pins. Those are really great and don't add a lot of bulk when you're sewing your pieces together. Make sure you got your Olfa rotary cutters. I like the 45mm size. And if you haven't replaced that blade in a while, make sure that you replace that blade and have a nice sharp blade to start a project with. Make sure you have a nice cutting mat. I really like a 24 by 36 inch size cutting mat or bigger. That's enough so that you can really lay out a cut of fabric and cut out some of your piece as well. Get yourself a nice long ruler, so that's a 6 or a 6.5 inch by 24 inch acrylic ruler. You can also get, they're up to 8 and 8.5 by 24 inch. Those are essential for cutting those long strips with the width of fabric. You're also going to need a square ruler. I love my 12.5 by 12.5 inch square ruler. And on that square ruler, make sure you have a nice 45-degree mark. So it's just a line that runs from corner to corner so that you can line up half square triangles and other triangles while you're quilting. Get yourself a pin cushion or one of those magnetic pin dishes. Those are fantastic for keeping pins from falling on the floor, and especially I sew on carpet, keeping them out of the carpet and all that. Marking tools, make sure you have a Choco liner and a friction pen or whatever marking tool you prefer. I really like having the Choco liner for dark fabrics because it's tough to get a white, a light color to show up without using chalk. And I do friction pens, but there's all kinds of air erase pens because we are going to be using those to mark some of our pieces when we're quilting. And also make sure on your machine you have a 1/4 inch piecing foot with or without a guide. That's really a preference thing on what you like, because this is a time to really look at your quilting. Make sure that you have your 1/4 inch locked in, so you're really doing those 1/4 inch seams well, and that should get you really successful for quilting. Just like last year, we are going to be doing a prize at the end of this year too. So I'm very excited to see what you guys do, and let's get started and start looking at the first block. Before we get to the block, I just want to show you the colors that I will be using for this year's quilt. So these are the 6 accent colors, and here is the background, the black, and they all go pretty well with that nice accent, your tourmaline fabric there. So each of these colors is going to be used in 2 of the blocks. And here we have another option you can use. You get some lighter multicolors here with a lighter background. You do not have to use all batiks. You can mix fabrics. One thing I really do like about these batiks is with a dry iron, you really get out those wrinkles, and they have a firmness, so they don't really need starch as much as regular print fabrics. So here we have our first block of the month. One of the themes to this year's block of the month is that all of these blocks are named after places in the United States. The name of this block is the Colorado quilt block, and I'm going to show you right now on the screen a pattern. Originally this showed up in a newspaper, the Kansas City Star, on January 8th of 1941, and you can see this is how you used to make quilts with these patterns, where you would cut this piece out of a newspaper, and basically you would use that and cut all to size. No rotary cutters and mats. It was definitely more of a very different quilting experience. For your block, you're going to need 8 4 by 4 inch squares of the tourmaline fabric. You're going to use 6 4 by 4 inch squares for your accent color, and 2 4 by 4 inch squares for your black. These are bigger than we need, but we're going to trim down our half square triangles after. If you look at the pattern too, you're going to notice that there's a cutting directions for a fat quarter. So on those instructions, letters A, B, C, and D are for the house setting. So you will not be using them for the quilt. Instead, you're going to be using the letter F to get the 6 accent colors out of your fabric. So you're going to take your 8 tourmaline 4 by 4 inch squares, and you're going to mark from corner to corner. I used a Choco liner for this. You can use a friction pen. And then we are going to layer right sides together our accent fabric. We have 6 accent fabrics. We're going to layer those with the tourmaline just like that. And we're going to layer our background, the 2 background, just like that. Again, those are right sides together. On batiks, it can be hard to tell which is the right side and the wrong side. A lot of times it won't really matter, but on prints it's definitely going to matter. So again, we're putting those right sides together. Now I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of my marked line. I'm going to take that to the sewing machine and I'll meet you back here. So now that I've sewn my 1/4 inch seam on both sides of our mark, we're going to cut right down that center line just like that. And then we're going to press these. I press them toward the tourmaline fabric. You can also press them open if you prefer. You're going to end up with a total of 4 of this black and tourmaline, or the background in tourmaline, and 12 of your accent color in the tourmaline. Now this block here is going to be a little bigger than you need. So you're going to need to trim it down to 3.5 inches. So to do that, the reason why we want this good 45-degree line here is because we want to line that up right with our middle seam there. And I'm going to trim around all 4 sides. I'm going to start here, making sure that I still have a little more than 3.5 inches at my 3.5 inch mark. I'm going to trim those 2 corners. This will also take off those dog ears, which is nice. But by keeping that 45-degree mark on the ruler and on your seam, you're going to be able to have those half square triangles meet right where we need them. So now for the second cut, I'm going to line this up again, but this time I'm going to make sure that I'm at 3.5 inches. Trim that one more time. And now we have a perfect 3.5 inch half square triangle block. We're going to have 16 total, and we're going to start putting those together. Once you've trimmed all your half square triangles down to 3.5 inches square, you're then going to assemble your block just as it shows in the pattern. So you're going to start by doing your rows. Again, always be careful, make sure that you've got everything lined up right. It's definitely easy to turn these half square triangles the wrong way. So just make sure you line it up and take them one at a time. Sew your rows together, and then you'll sew your columns. You'll notice in the instructions that I put directions for pressing if you're pressing to one side or another. I personally like pressing to one side, especially when I'm putting together squares like this, because it allows me to interlock all of my stitches. So by pressing one row one way and then the next row the other way, once I sew those rows together, I'm able to lock those very corners and stitches in, and it makes a really nice result and gets those points perfect. If you're doing the house setting, then you're going to put your houses together in 2 basic units. The first is the door unit, which is pretty simple. You're going to have pieces C from your accent fabric and E from your background. Those are going to get pieced together just like that, and then press to either side, doesn't matter for this one, or open. And then you are going to add piece B to the top until you end up with a door unit that looks like this. For your roof unit, you're going to take your long accent colored piece A, and you have 2 4.5 inch squares here of your background fabric. You're going to mark those from corner to corner. Again, make sure that you are marking them so that they go in a roof-like direction just like that. I'm going to this time sew on the line itself, and then I'm going to cut away till I have a 1/4 inch seam on either side and fold those open, and iron those open rather. For the roof unit, you're also going to use your background pieces G and F and your accent color D. You're going to sew them together in a row just like this, and then you are going to apply that to the other roof piece that you have. Once you've got your roof unit complete, you're just going to take your door unit, attach that to the side of your block, attach the roof unit on top of that, and there you have your very first house. From there, to make the full quilt, you're eventually going to be adding sashing to the sides. We're going to cover that in a later video. But here we have our first block of the year. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in February.